Today on Life of Dad, we're talking about speaking to your kids about racism and gardening. Here on Life of Dad, we discuss two topics on each episode, one heavy and one light. And then at the end, somehow, it all ties together. Okay, guys, here we are. Tommy Riles here, founder of Life of Dad, and my co-founders, David Guest and Ryan Hamilton. We have two topics today. We are talking to your kids about racism and also about gardening. What we do in this show is we always have one serious topic and one light topic, and we talk about both of them. And then in the end, we kind of figure out how they perhaps go together. And it'll be interesting this time around. So, David, we're going to kick it off with you. So go ahead, choose a topic. Let's get this thing started.
Okay, well, I guess we definitely got started. This has just been a historic last 2 weeks since we've done our last podcast with, protests around the nation, the tragic killing of George Floyd, and which has really just brought up all these issues that have, plagued our whole society forever, and really, just something that we just can't shake and can't, get past as a nation. And something to me feels different to me. There's been so many protests in the past, but this seems more profound, much more profound. And I hope it really makes some real changes. Ryan Hamilton, what are your thoughts on the whole thing? And tell us a little bit about yourself and all that.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Tommy. Well, first off, good to be on with you guys. Rocking once again. Yeah. So I grew up in St. Louis. I grew up in Ferguson, of all places in the world, which, as you both know, was itself rocked by similar occurrences as George Floyd. And, a young man was shot. Mike Brown was shot by the police, 4 or 5 years ago? Forget exactly when, but this seems familiar. And in fact, this occurrence seems just a little bit more shocking and more egregious, I think, this time. None of these is easy. And this is probably one of the toughest that we've seen. And I'm here in the nation's capital right now. I'm here in DC. A few weekends ago, could literally hear like helicopters circling of all matters of the day and night. And, they just wouldn't stop. It was hard to get sleep, actually. And just seeing it on the news and just seeing people protest and seeing some of the violence and just how it politically escalated into just some unfortunate situations on the streets. It just hasn't been great. Some wonderful, peaceful demonstrations amidst some, horrible looting and violence, and just anger from all sides. None of these gets easier, that's for sure. And it's impossible to talk about. I wonder if we could just go straight into gardening, because this is always the hard part, is talking about stuff like this,
Yeah.
But yeah,
for
just
sure.
definitely difficult topics all around.
So I've been kind of traveling with my family over the past month. So we weren't in Los Angeles when George Floyd's murder happened. We weren't here when, they started having the curfew in the city. So we were kind of traveling. We were in campgrounds. We were unplugged for the most part throughout the country, which was kind of nice, because every time we did get a report of what was going on, it was really sad and heartbreaking and scary and all that. But there was enough conversation with some family that we're seeing and all that, where it did lead to conversations with our two oldest kids, Barbara, who's 10 now, and Tommy, who's 8 now, where they just kind of started hearing things like, what's going on? So then Lucy and I decided, okay, well, we've never talked to them about racism before. And maybe we're wrong in this way, but in Lucy and my mind, it didn't feel like we had to have a conversation with them about racism until now, right? This seemed like the time to have that conversation. And it's an uncomfortable conversation, it was because I had to tell them about how, a man was murdered by two cops, which it's hard for kids to comprehend at all, right? They think of the cops as, someone that's always helping someone, right? So that part was hard to just kind of explain, and then to explain that it was, because of the color of his skin, and it's so hard for me to even to explain to my kids. I don't know how to explain it, so I don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. My wife doesn't know what to say. People that are on TV don't know what to say. It's also, I feel like uncomfortable and sad and unfortunate for everyone, but it was good that I had these conversations with our kids. I don't know, but I think that we talked to them about race, and we talked to them about how certain people aren't kind to people with a different skin color, and hopefully they'll never be that way, right? I mean, again, I don't even know what to say. What we as parents are just trying to figure it out. It's so hard to know what to say or do. So I'll pass it back to one of you guys.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it.
I was gonna say
it was myself. Honestly, some of the stuff.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, it was surreal over here. Like, it's a little background. Ryan and I were friends as kids. Growing up in St. Louis together. And the three of us, worked together in the very early days of Life of Dad to create the website. And Ryan's a coder. He did a lot of most of the coding on the original site. And it's just been a great friendship and, business partnership with us to make this business that we really care about, or centered around fatherhood. And we all really care about, obviously, our roles as dads. And, it's tricky, especially, as your kids get a little older. My son just turned 12 and my daughter is 9, and they're like people. They have real personalities now. They have opinions on things, and they see things and they make up their own minds about things. And it's been interesting to see all these events. I mean, let's just talk about all the crazy events of the entire year 2020 so far. But then to be, kind of inflamed with these wild events, and to see them see all this stuff going down on, in such a young and impressionable age, but also at the age that they're really making up their own minds about what they believe in, and what they, how they want to be as people. And it was a trip. We went to, we're all pandemicked out here, but the beaches are now open in Southern California. So we actually just drove out to the beach, and just parked our car, and we had a fun day, like body surfing and building sandcastles and stuff. And then we got a bunch of extremely unhealthy like snacks, like corn nuts and like bugles, and
it's Cheez-Its in my household.
Your Cheez-Its household. Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Cheez-Its. Yeah.
If I could garden Cheez-Its, if there was a way,
then we wouldn't have to pay for them.
Grow our own.
A Cheez-It tree. I think there's that could be our next big adventure. I think it'd be a great idea. But when we came back, like we turned on the TV, and the middle of Los Angeles was just erupting into this massive riot, and we're like, what? Like, we had no idea this was even going on at all, and it was. Neighborhoods that we knew very well, like right in Hollywood and right by the Grove, which is, if you know Los Angeles or any city, it's like a big outdoor mall, kind of where lots of people go. And even like streets like Beverly Hills, like some of the famous, very expensive shops in Beverly Hills were just overrun by rioters and protection. And it was like, whoa, like we could have easily driven down there, like a bunch of nerds, and driven through a huge crowd of people, unsuspectingly rushing toward police officers in riot gear. And we just watched the whole thing. Actually, we were just kind of cracking up about the whole thing. Obviously it was serious, but there was just a lot of like chaotic things to look at. It's kind of joking about it, which I thought hopefully made it okay. Or at least it was fun for us to do. And I don't know. It's interesting. Ryan, you have a son who is a teenager, I believe. And you probably are seeing some of that same stuff.
Yeah. So my son, he actually, amidst all this, literally just turned 14 years old. So I've got a teenage boy, who I had with a black woman, to be specific. And we were celebrating his birthday amidst all this stuff. And, it's easier to talk with him than like my 2-year-old daughter who is 2 and just like formulating language, like she's starting to really kind of get going, and she's talking extremely well. In fact, we could probably have that talk with her to this day, and she'd probably be somewhat fluent in that.
Just let her do some gardening first. Do a little bit in the yard before you get too deep with conversation, right?
I think we'll talk a little bit more about that if gardening is also a topic, but she absolutely understands watering plants a little bit better than she would understand race, I think. However, my son, he has been around the block. He's seen several of these. I remember, visiting grandma and grandpa in Ferguson, Missouri. He definitely remembers this. I forget how long ago it was, but he remembers all that. He remembers Eric Garner before that, and just the whole litany of these incidents. So, between him talking about it with his teachers and his classmates at school, and just like through the internet and like all the memes and like social media, like he's fluent in all that stuff. It's like easier to have those conversations with him. However, my daughter, who again just turned like 2.5, who and I've been through a divorce. Like, David, you understand divorce and finding new love in your life. New love in my life is she's Irish, she's Italian, and we have a beautiful daughter who's 2, and who's mixed, of course. And the concept of race hasn't even really come up in her life yet. So to have that discussion with her would be, to us, we think, a little maybe premature, because look, she's just learning the basics. She's learning like cat and dog and plant, like the basics. It's harder for us to kind of broach those kind of more complex worldly topics.
Sure.
At this point. So honestly, we kind of like your daughter, imagine Katie there, Tommy, who's like how old is she?
She's 5, or she just turned 5 the other day, but we didn't. No, actually, she was there. I guess she was there when we were talking about it, but it just went over her head. Maybe she was processing some of it. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't exclude her from it, but we didn't necessarily include her either. Because it was the other 2 that were kind of asking the questions. Yeah. So that was kind of the way we handled it. Yeah.
But for us, it's like, Cora, we're sitting on the front stoop and, maybe we're celebrating, her big brother's birthday. And we're seeing, not a protest where we are. So like in context, we live about a few miles north of the National Mall, like, north Capitol Hill. So we could, again, like we could hear the helicopters flying over. We can hear protests and like, the riots and things like that. But we heard helicopters nonstop, and they, like, in our neighborhood, there were like peace vigils and like just different little things like that. We're kind of closer to the like the suburbs, so like little things were happening up here, and some picket signs, Black Lives Matter on the lawn, and sorry, both my daughter and my son are seeing all this stuff. People wanting to speak up and talk about it and perhaps make a difference in their own way. So, hey, look, even right now, there's a Black Lives Matter sign that was given to us by a gay white father who lives 2 doors down. And it's just interesting, these stories. Like he came over and gave us a Black Lives Matter sign, which like is on our front lawn. We're looking at it like, yeah, we're, we didn't get into all the protests. We didn't do all that stuff, but like, hey, Black lives do matter. So like, here's the sign. I just find it interesting, like, that a gay white father
Well,
we wanted to gift a black man a Black Lives Matter sign to put on his front lawn, and so like my daughter seeing all this stuff and like, hey, well, now we have to talk about like what is this and what does it mean, and so the world is forcing us to have a conversation, whereas we're trying to like we don't talk about race or racism with our 2-year-old, like so. Right. It's just interesting how these things, like in very ironic ways, like force us to talk about them.
Well, and from your neighbor's standpoint, I mean, I feel like, and I don't know what to do sometimes as well. Like, I think I reached out to you, Ryan, and I've reached out to, some black friends that I have over the past couple of weeks, just like, I feel for you. I'm sorry. I hope you're okay, but I don't know if you want to hear that. I don't know, but we're just trying to figure out what to do, because we love you. We've been friends for 10 years, right? So, and I've never thought that we would have to talk about race. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's very interesting, but I get it is for the greater good that we are now. It's just it's all very odd at the same time. Sometimes.
Yeah, it's if you could see my phone. Like the number of people who have reached out, like it's tremendous. Like you all certainly reached out as friends and brothers and partners and co-founders. Man, I went through a layoff like several months ago for my job, like,
right.
And interestingly enough, like, the co-founder of that company reached back out during all this stuff. So like, it's unheard of to hear like, of just company-wide, like, you've just laid off a third of your staff. Usually in situations like that, you don't hear anything from like HR, you hear like, the 3-paragraph, like, termination email, but then like after that, you're gone. Like, and you figure out the next course in your life. Just interesting, like old friends, old camp buddies, co-founders, old childhood buddies, texting, reaching out, emailing, sending Facebook messages, tweets, text messages on my phone, just from all walks of life, just you're reaching out. And I'm just sitting here with my family, like celebrating my son's birthday and like trying to raise basil plants and stuff like that. Just receiving this like outpouring of love and support and thinking to myself, wow, like, these are all great people, and I know they all love, and it's like I know they all want to figure out like what to do, and this is amazing. It's like, now we're in this conversation. We're on this conversation now.
Do you guys?
It's always it's always good hearing from y'all, but it's like, this sucks. Like, this sucks, the timing of it, and it's like just the fact that we keep on having to talk about race in America, in this way. It's like, dude, I love hearing from my brothers and my friends, and my gosh, even like the people that laid me off, like felt it incumbent upon, like for them to reach back out to me when they're probably not legally kind of supposed to, as true friends and brothers, to like forge a connection. It's telling. It's really telling, not only about like the nature of this particular incident, just the importance of it. I think it's always good hearing. It's always good hearing from good people, but the circumstances are tough. They're just really tough. Nobody ever wants to have this conversation. Like I'll be very frank about that. Like, you never want to have this conversation. Again, dude, I just want to raise basil plants and tomatoes. Like, I mean, and this is where the gardening comes in. It's like that's like seriously like where the peace and the calm comes in.
I think we gotta switch to gardening.
No, we have to switch to gardening.
Yeah. That's our other topic for today. And my little story with the pandemic. I think the pandemic is like fascinating because I through the whole thing, I feel like I'm living in an alternative universe. Like, like this massive switch happened in everybody's life, and everyone life energy went cascading in a totally different direction than it's usually been.
Yeah.
And I can just
I call it social pruning.
Social pruning. Well, a lot of things.
We've been literally cut off from society and like pruned back into our households, man.
Totally. Oh, yeah. I mean, so many things got pruned back. I mean, that's the truth, because if I just looked at a normal day of my normal life during normal circumstances, it's like go, 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 go from the moment I wake up early till the minute I go to bed.
Yeah.
And, that's a mix of work and fun and raising kids and taking them to all their activities and shopping and just running amok, and doing all these harebrained schemes that we're pursuing stuff. It's nonstop. And then with this pandemic, everything just got pruned down, just like you say. And all that energy, though, didn't go away. It just goes into different channels now, right? Yeah. I mean,
offshoots.
Totally. I mean, Tom, you just went on a month-long road trip. That certainly wouldn't have happened, I can't imagine, without this pandemic. Gardening box. It's like, this thing is amazing. It's like 20 feet long, made out of wood. We went to Lowe's. We drove the poor guy crazy at Lowe's who cuts the wood. Mm-hmm. We were back like 10 times, and then we built the thing, and then we made a little like ridge around it, and we filled it with dirt. I even, like, this poor kid cutting the wood at Lowe's, I even was like coming back photos of it in progress. And so anyway, it's finally done, and we planted all these plants in there: corn, tomatoes, and I don't know anything about gardening. I just figured to put the dirt in it and some water, and it seems to be going okay.
What have you eaten from it? Like, what has
not a lot yet. Like, everything's bloomed like crazy. The corn is madness. It's like 12 feet high. It's insane. I can't believe these things were teeny tiny when we bought them just like 6 weeks ago. They're like, wow. And then we planted some berry plants, blackberries, raspberries, all that stuff. That's the only thing we've really been able to eat. You can just kind of like pick those off and eat them. We have strawberry plants. I don't know. So far it's not producing a ton of veg fruit yet, which apparently it's supposed to. That's what I'm figuring. So
strawberries.
I have strawberries. There's a couple strawberries came out. They're just like little, kind of were. I don't know. You might know this about the strawberries, but they were kind of like, I just tossed them in the yard and didn't eat them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got a full-fledged farm going on over here on the side of my house.
Awesome.
So we have a couple of years, maybe 3 years ago, we went all in on the garden, and I think there were strawberries in there, and there were tomatoes for sure. We love tomatoes. There were peppers. And we put a lot of effort into it, but we had two things that were fighting against us. One, we have rodents in our backyard, so rats will come in and eat it, right? And then two, I'm kind of a hoarder in life in general, and you're supposed to trim these plants as they grow big, but I couldn't bear saying goodbye to any of the plant. In my mind, it was like the bigger the plant, the better. So I got to let this baby keep going, even though you're told you got to trim it down so then it can really grow, right?
That's right.
So the combination of those two things, it turned into like insane, plants growing out of control. And then the rodents came in and ate everything. So I think we got a couple tomatoes, after months and months of effort, we might've gotten a couple tomatoes out of the deal. And it wasn't relaxing at all, which it sounds like it might be for you, Ryan. So I want to pass to you, but for me, it turned into this stressful, I want to let these babies grow.
Rodents and like locusts and like what else are coming out? Yeah.
And we never got any food. But Ryan, let's hear your story.
Yeah, I feel like as Edward Scissorhands with the pruning. I feel like I'm just like, it's like art to me. It like every little plant's like a little bonsai or something that I'm just like trying to like perfect. And so like the thing is like as you prune it, it's supposed to like kind of stress it out and like restrict it so that the energy like tries to fight you and like actually bushes out and grows even stronger. And so I'm all about it. Like COVID has like literally, I feel like, again, has kind of like pruned us off from society. So like social pruning, snip, 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 snip. We're all COVID. We're all like locked in at home. Add, George Floyd and all this like, kind of social unrest and you know, we're literally like the DC mayor, and I'm sure various other mayors and governors across the country are telling people to stay at home, like where we can't go out. So it's like, all right, well, COVID mixed with like all the racial injustice and like all this stuff, like we're at home, we're socially pruned, like all this energy has to go somewhere. So like for me, you know, much like you with the RV, Tom, and you, David, with your garden, like it's literally like whatever we have, like from the store, like, you know, if there's an old onion or something that we've used in the salad, like I'm snipping off and like trying to propagate roots. And it's like, there's always some kind of like seedling or like seed or like little clone plant, or like they're just we've got potatoes, we got onions, we got scallions, we got all the herbs you can imagine, basil, oregano, tarragon, like, you know, you name it. Yeah, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants.
Do you cook with all that stuff?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a little bit premature for like a bountiful harvest yet. Like I'm sure we're like still at least a few weeks, a month off from some of this stuff, but like, yeah, I mean, talk about pruning. I mean, we've been peeling like little lettuce leaves off of our lettuce plants and like eating salads every day, of some sort. You know, our tomato plants, we got about 7 or 8 tomato plants that, you know, that we're starting to see little like green little cherries pop out of some of the stuff. So like, yeah, the harvest is coming soon. Our potato plants are, dude, we're going to need like a cellar, because like we're going to have like 10, 15 sacks of potatoes once all is said and done. And dude, this is just stuff that we got just from cooking. Like I cook hash browns, I cook breakfast. So like there's an old like potato that's sprouting, like slice that in half and just like plant both halves in the ground. And then you got like 2 potato plants, and like that'll yield like 3, 4, 5 potatoes each. So like, it's patience and time and consistency, and you just like it, you know, these like, it gets me in this like Zen state of like,
that's great, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we're all like
living life and repeating and just doing what is required to keep things growing and, you know, living. Yeah, you know,
right?
Like our farm ancestors would do, right?
Yeah,
to stay alive.
Except our farm ancestors didn't have social media, so they couldn't post like pictures of their potato plant like we. You know, it's like the amount of joy that I get to see something like beginning to sprout on one of these plants. It's like, oh God, kids, get over here, check this out. They're like, really, Dad?
My farm ancestors probably got whipped. At the end of the day, you know, if we're being completely honest. So there's no social media for them. You know.
Oh man, for sure. Well, I guess that brings us back to the other topic. Like I'm curious to like with you, Ryan, with you, you know, being a black dad and your son who's now 14, like how do you talk to him about all this stuff that's going on, or about him just growing up, you know, in this world where there's so much difficulty?
Yeah, so like it's, you know, dude, go, you know, I mean, not even go to school, but just like do your work. Like right now, he's at home. He's homeschooled. Like, so we've been having this conversation with him since Mike Brown, you know, must be 4 or 5 years ago. I'm forgetting how long ago it was, but we were having this conversation with him in the context of like, hey, he's a young black boy. He's a young black male growing up, and he's got, he's autistic too. So his facility and kind of like navigating social situations has been always a little bit, you know, like a different ride for him. And so we watched, you know, Mike Brown or like an Eric Garner situation unfold, and we were thinking to ourselves as his parents, like, well, you know, not all cops are the same. You know, not all, you know, young black males are the same. Like, so if he goes out into the world and is just trying to get along and, you know, do this and that, maybe be out with his friends, like, you know, and he's a little bit less compliant, like what kind of situation could he end up in if he's just a well-meaning, like 13, 14, at the time, probably 7 or 8 year old, young black male just trying to get along and have a good time. Like, what if he, I don't know, was like dumb like we did and went and vandalized and like took TP and like TP the neighbor's house or, did something stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would happen to him if he really got on the wrong side of the law and didn't know how to navigate that social situation? So for us, it's always been about like, as an autistic child, how does he navigate the world in general? Later on, just like that uncertainty of just, hey, when you're out in the world, be compliant because you just don't know what, like, kind of legal, kind of law enforcement situation you might be in. Like, well, just be smart, it's always hard to have that conversation with any child, with any person, and it hasn't gotten easier this time. So it's another situation like now that he's 14, where it's like, oh yeah, well, we're thinking like, how do we have that conversation again? And honestly, I don't even know if we've figured that out. It's an unfolding, kind of ever evolving situation where it's kind of just like, again, all the education's remote right now, but dude, just stay in your books, keep your nose to the grindstone, stay focused on your education, help me in the garden, like let's be doing things that are positive and just like that are unquestionably good so that we're never caught in a situation where we are on the wrong side of the law, like, so if and I hate to say it, but it's like, look, the best probability he has for success is to never, go live a life of crime or be out on the streets doing something stupid, like any of us, like none of us should be doing that. Like, dude, just focus on the garden, focus on your books, focus on your studies, focus on like the good things and like getting along with people. Things will probably be fine for you. And we won't have to have those greater conversations. I mean, as a dad, like, I know a lot of innocent people get caught up in the law and, that, and that's a whole nother topic. But to answer your question, like, to the extent that we have control, it's like, well, yeah, like, dude, keep your kids on the straight and narrow and just try to give them that positive structure. And it's really that simple. Like, have these positive conversations, try to prevent some of those harder ones. So we haven't really had those tougher conversations.
One thing that so when I go back to the conversation I was having with my son, particularly, and this is a couple weeks ago now, he did a couple things. He just kept kind of saying, so what is racism and why do people feel that way? And so it was like questions like that, and they're all kind of hard to explain because I've never explained it to anyone, right? And certainly don't have a full understanding of it as someone that is black, that is black would have, I guess, right? So I just kind of did my best with it, and tried to explain racism and tried to explain, everything about the situation. But one thing you just said, Ryan, stuck out was, you're telling your son to stay compliant. And maybe that's different. Maybe a white parent doesn't think of that. And I haven't thought of that. Am I teaching my son, if he's in a situation, to stay compliant? And I don't know. Whereas, some of these things have terribly, sadly led to a bad situation for a young black person, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's somewhere where it would not be the same for a white person, right? And that's so sad.
Yeah, but I imagine you're not, telling your children like, "Hey, take a torch to the police precinct,"
Right.
like, law enforcement, whatever, yeah, you don't want your kids to be non-compliant with the law.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, I think.
Well, and with that,
on the other hand, like, hey, lift your voice and speak out against injustice if you face it. That's a hard balance, right? It's hard.
Yeah.
Where does one end and the other one begin? Like it's hard to ever say that,
One thing that just is so sad, doesn't seem fair to me, as a white guy growing up white, that, just like you said, we all do stupid stuff like growing up. When you're in high school, you go and you TP someone's house or you do some crazy stuff. We used to grab like, you know, shopping carts and like go down the like side of the highway, like holding them outside the door. So they're like making crazy sparks and stuff. And just like dumb stuff, you know, people partying, drinking, you know, all the things that people do, you know, when you're young and growing up. And,
Young and dumb,
you know, what you're saying like is very illuminating because, you know, these things that people just think of as normal things growing up and not kind of, you know, sort of harmless, you know, breaking laws, I guess, you know, but not hurting anybody in my mind is something that probably I would see differently if I was black or my kids were black. And I would, you know, maybe like what you're saying, like don't even think about doing something like that because that could really lead to bad things. I'm curious, did your parents talk to you about stuff like that when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think they did. And it was probably like in one ear out the other. Because honestly, like, look, you know, I grew up in Ferguson. However, I did go to school with a bunch of, you know, I was integrated with a bunch of white children, and quite frankly, like a very diverse kind of classroom structure that I grew up in. So, so a lot of the TPing and the stupid stuff that we used to do as kids, in hindsight, now that I'm looking back at that, and looking at some of the situations that that we found ourselves in as kids, dude, as a black man, like I'm lucky. I'm seriously lucky because like, dude, we didn't always like come like, you know, we say TPing the neighbor's house, but we know we did like dumber stuff than that. Like, and we probably got caught up, dude. And some of those times where we got caught up, it could have been a lot worse. Like, and I'm seeing that now. Like I'm probably very lucky to be still on this phone call right now. And also probably protected by virtue of the fact that I probably had a bunch of white friends. Honestly, like, because if I had done a lot of this stuff, just a bunch of young black males going out and doing this stuff, then my gosh, and game over. In Ferguson, game over. If I did any of that stuff, like, you know, in hindsight, I can see that now. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
Would you say
I'm guessing. I'm making guesses. You know?
So Ryan, I think about I'm 40 now. I feel like you're the same age or maybe a year or two
42.
older, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, think of yourself at 18, the way your parents spoke to you about it compared to how you might speak to your son about it over the next few years. Is the nation struggling more with racism now than then, or is it about the same, or is that impossible to say?
It's both. I mean, it's impossible to say because look, like if so, my grandmother's 98, right?
Sure.
My grandma was probably teaching my dad the stuff when they were poor black on the streets of St. Louis,
right?
Differently than my dad would teach me as a young black kind of, you know, educated up and coming professional teaching me.
Sure.
My grandmother, she's 98. She turned 98. We thought about COVID and like how she's taking all this and like what she must have been going through in her life. Dude, she lived through the Depression. She lived through like segregation. Like she lived through like Jim Crow laws and like all these kind of like.
She's not afraid of COVID.
She's not afraid of COVID. Yeah. COVID's like nothing to her. I mean, like what, dude? Like the further you get up my family tree in that chain, it's like now you're talking about like, again, slave roots. Like we were whipped, we were beaten, like we were. And I was talking to my partner earlier tonight saying I was going to be on this podcast and we were talking about this topic thinking that has the topic of race gotten easier? But it's like, well, yeah, we're not like slaves on a plantation anymore. Like, you know, we're not commodities anymore. We're not brought over on ships and like traded on an open market anymore. But we kind of, in a way, in a weird kind of way, kind of are. Like we're still the commodity. I mean, you look at social media, like we're the commodity there, and we are the factor of production. Like we all have jobs, we all go for, you know, and granted it's for a paycheck nowadays, but yeah, we pay our dues to the, you know, whatever system, and we go serve our employer for a paycheck and benefits and all this stuff. But we're beholden to that money and those benefits. And we're still having racial injustice play out in America, as it's always done since the get-go of this country. Because, I mean, look, the country was founded on, let's be honest, the pillage and the rape of one, culture of people, Native Americans, and built on the backs of Black people via slavery. The country wouldn't be the great place that it is to this day without that. And I think that's hard to, you can't erase that. That is the truth. You can't separate that from the days and the times that we live today. Like the times in the days that we're living today are directly and indirectly linked to that past. And it's a horrible past, especially for Black folks. And it continues to be that way. It's gotten easier, and I'm sure in many ways. I mean, we have social media, we have big, smartphones, and we have like all this like cool Jetsons like technology. So we're living more like Jetsons than like Flintstones, but racial injustice just persists. Yeah, it's evolved and it's changed, but it's still there.
I mean, I think what you just said.
Who knows?
What you just said about the phones was just one of the biggest changes ever. I mean, we all remember the LA riots, with Rodney King, and that really happened because a guy had a video camera. And that was like the early 90s when it was sort of rare to have a video camera, and he had one and he recorded that led to the LA riots. I remember that when I was in high school, and just being just so shaken and just kind of sad about the whole thing. And now everybody has a camera in their pocket, so and I think I think just the horrific video of George Floyd is, as a white guy, I've heard about all these things and seen them and seen video clips and read news stories and all this stuff will explain everything that's going on. So I've always known that this exists and it's horrible and things I've seen too in my life. But that video I think just sent a shockwave through everyone. There's just that. I think, one thing that's been unique about all these protests is that it's how many white people there are, and it's and all races of people and all the support. Just what you said, they got your neighbor down the street, the sign. Like, I think it's just affected everyone so deeply. And what I'm, understanding is, what Black people have seen their whole lives, as we know. But now through the phones, we're all seeing it, and we're all being like, what is happening? Like, how is this happening? It's shocking. And we can't believe it. Poor man is dying. Yeah. And that's just a drop in the bucket. I know. And so I have a question for both you guys. Like, do you feel like this will be different? This feels different to me. This feels different than the protests that I've seen in the past. It feels bigger. I mean, my God, we had every demonstrations in every city, not just in the United States, around the world at the same time. Also some looting around the whole world at the same time. And just it's like something I've never seen in my life. But how do you think, what happens from here? Do you feel like anything changes or will this make a difference?
I think so. I think this one is different. Again, as a Ferguson resident, I grew up about a mile or two from where Mike Brown was shot. And when I saw George Floyd, this situation is just different, man. This one's deeper. This one, again, it's just more egregious. It's murder. I mean, there's no reason that guy had to die at all, with proper law enforcement procedure. And so I think in that sense, especially when you, like you said, you layer on social technologies and smartphones and gadgets and all the stuff that we have at our disposal on top of a COVID world where we're literally all at home, like doing nothing else but consuming this social media. It did get those impressions. Like, in a media world, it got the impressions. This story was just like the bigger, like 10 times Mike Brown in its magnitude, in its egregiousness. But then like compound that with the fact that like we're all like literally locked down on Netflix on our smartphones, like watching this stuff unfold. It was just like that perfect storm, right? And like the snow globe, it's like I feel like we just like got locked in the snow globe and like the world just shook it,
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, yeah, I think it's this one's different, and I think the whole world saw this. The whole world saw this one, and I think the mayors and the governors and the elected officials across the kind of on the state level, probably more so than the federal, like are actually making the proper changes to law enforcement procedures, like no chokeholds, and I'm starting to see like these little like policy shifts happen, and let alone like walking around our beautiful neighborhood here in Northeast DC, like seeing families of all colors and shapes and sexual orientations, and yes, you name it, like all the families are out in support, having peace vigils and things like that, just nonstop. Even the kids are out. It's just the kids are, oddly enough, as we don't know like how to talk with them about this, like they're kind of figuring it out in their own social media circles. It's weird. It's I saw a little down in front of the White House, I think I saw this like viral video of this like black kid that like jumped the fence, and like the National Guard or like the troops were kind of like advancing toward him, and this like white girl kind of jumped the fence also and like got in front of them, and they're like, well, what's the what are they going to do with this little white girl? And I'm just like seeing that little activism from the children has been interesting. So like I think this one has absolutely struck kind of a deeper chord at a time when we're all where we feel like locked up and kind of like socially pruned, like I think this is part of that outlet, is like being somewhat of an activist. I think an inadvertent activist, like none of us wants to like have to be active about anything, because like we're in our gardens, like I don't have to be active about anything other than like trying to make stuff grow, or getting good sun or rain or whatever, but yeah,
to your answer your question too, Dave. I would say it definitely. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I kind of remember Rodney King, but not really. And from the conversations, as I've said a couple times now, within our family, to the conversations that we're all seeing kind of online every day, and then the activism and the the meetups throughout the world, it's astounding, really. And it actually seems that it has started to move the needle. There's policy changing happening, I think, on the local and national level, actually, it seems. And, for me, again, I'm just going to do my best with my kids to just kind of raise them to be great kids and love everyone, and hopefully never have an ounce of some of this racism that we see come from different people, which is so sad. So I would like to think that it's different this time. And I have a way to maybe tie this up. So the pruning. So Ryan, when you so eloquently explained pruning, and then I was speaking about the bush that I let grow and just want to let it keep growing. So you think of that. Think of my plant that eventually ruined everything. It kept growing. But if it had been pruned, and you're getting rid of the bad parts, the parts you don't need, and you're slowly trimming them off, if we're somehow doing that to society, and someone's speaking badly, let's trim them off a little bit, and something bad's happening over here, all right, let's fix that and cut that off a little bit. If we're able to kind of prune this entire world a little bit, hopefully that will help us head in the right direction. Thank you so much for listening to Life of Dad. Please check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Life of Dad, and of course at lifeofdad.com. And we want more people to listen to the show, so please leave a rating or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Go Fatherhood.